Just because you have certification in one field, it does not make you an authority in another. By Renee Lindstrom, author of The Somatic Archetypes, written by a real person. I have been hardlined about people staying in their own lane when listening to others sharing their experiences. This has included scrutiny of professionals who carry their authority from one profession into other skill sets where they are not certified. Let me tell you why. I work with triggers from a perspective of listening. This listening focus is on the facts that triggered or stimulated the reactions in all the parties of the event. However, in the moment when listening to one person, they would have full attention, yet in the action of listening, space is held for the perspectives of those included in the event being discussed. This ensures there is balance between all sides for equality and mutuality. In the replay of events as a teacher or coach, the focus I have is on the skill level developed in the listener, not the speaker. Listeners pivot the speaker's reactive experience stimulated in current events and can diffuse them or stimulate them further by increasing it into heightened states of conflict, chaos, and confusion, aggravating into harmful situations that become violent and harmful to the speaker and others in the event unnecessarily. As a professional listener and somatic empath, I experience people seeking counsel with others as an attempt to receive empathy. What they are receiving is sympathy disguised as empathy by listeners who interpret what they are hearing through their own opinions, beliefs, and memories. I have not come across any listener who has not had specific training and who has practiced listening skills to be able to hold some in a productive space of listening so they can get to the core of their trigger and resolve it within themselves. Rather, what I have experienced is the listener becoming triggered themselves and adding fuel to the experience they didn't personally have. Once hearing someone's experience, they take ownership of it as though a real experience of theirs. This is harmful for both the speaker's self-worth and that of those being discussed. The speaker is discussing in an attempt to seek inner resolution for the emotional reaction within themselves, and what they are getting is the speaker's emotional reaction. The listener's position can diffuse the speaker's reaction and turn it into a response where the speaker finds their own solutions without being swayed by the listener and their needs. Listeners' skill development to put their reactions on hold and take away clarity for the speaker to resolve their own issues. A professional listener needs to be skilled in setting their reactions aside to give their full attention to the speaker's reactions. Speakers will be unable to turn their explosive word vomit into fair, balanced, and logical responses. They are in the heat of a reaction and turning to you to diffuse it, not give their power away to you. This is extremely important as you have the power to escalate it into violence and abuse towards others in your network and community. Listener skill development separates out the past from the present circumstances. The listener's skill development begins with separating the present from the past experiences. The speaker's past has been the formation of the social conditioned experience in any moment. This means that when the trauma from the past experiences has not been resolved, it is usually carried forward into the next experience. Imagine your nervous system and spontaneous emotional nature packing suitcases into each new experience. How big is the suitcase that is lugged from one experience to another? How full is it? Is it stuffed to the point of breaking? Is it 3/4 full or almost empty? Now ask yourself, if you were to wear one experience like an outfit, would you put on everything in the suitcase? If you were to choose one to wear, how would it compare to wearing everything in the suitcase? How would it feel physically and emotionally? How would it visually appear to you to wear one or all of it? Listeners' most important personal reflection during listening. The most important question a listener can ask themselves while listening to others is, do I increase the emotional reaction to the trigger by adding fuel, or do I diffuse it? Example of professional confusion in career boundaries. Personally, this author hasn't witnessed anyone actively listening. Diffuse reactions. I do witness people fueling emotional reactions. In one situation, it was a family doctor of medicine giving opinions and strategies for someone to support their mental and health and well-being. Keep in mind, he had no training in that area and was giving the same advice as lay people do. Now I will add that he was triggered by what he was hearing and responding through his own personal reaction. It was causing the person receiving the advice to take steps that increased the conflict and chaos inside them and outside in others surrounding them through the strategies they took as a result. It could have destroyed their life. This was no different than a friendship group or family giving someone advice that has no consequences for them, however huge ones for those receiving the advice. However, that title that carried authority added quite a few layers of mental, emotional, and physical trauma. Yes, trauma. Another example of professional confusion in career boundaries. This example is a friend of someone who is a professional who wasn't able to separate their personal reaction from something I shared with someone else. Yet I believe they gave counsel that was dominated by being a professional. The person had been used as leverage in a community group for an illusion of achievement and status. However, I witnessed a complete lack of professionalism in breakdown behaviors that still emanated status, power, and control. This professional didn't know I was a professional listener with an ability to put my reactions aside in the moment to observe and track what was happening in real time. They totally and completely exposed themselves through their emotional behavioral response. Not only did they expose the crossover of their emotional reactions and perceived authority, there was a moment of demasking that demonstrated the power over tactics they tried to exert over the person they could have been supporting in a healthier way to empower versus disempower them. Side note, as a somatic empathic teacher and mentor, this is what I naturally look for without even being aware that I am. I observe the control tactics people exert to have power over another's sovereignty. It is this author's superpower. Listening skill levels can diffuse trauma or create it. Did you know that when you give someone your opinion that supports your triggered state, you are actually inflicting trauma onto the mental, emotional, and physical function? Did you know that when you support someone who is blaming and shaming others to redirect them, you are also increasing trauma and being abusive and violent towards them? Why? You are redirecting their free will based upon your opinion, perspective, and beliefs. Those are developed for you, not to direct others. Personal tracking of spoken words while listening. In these situations, people can't track back what was just being said, which leaves room for confusion, doubt, etc. However, some listeners with developed skills can track spoken words because they are trained to and they do not respond from personal reactions. If they feel stimulated and react personally, they will have been trained with the skill to put their personal reactions aside and not bring it into the interaction. Why? The training is based on not being attached to outcomes for someone else. Their focus is not on telling people what's best for them. They aren't interested in what it would look like in a group. Why? That is a disease. It is the beginning of dying. It is a slow and difficult life where a person is barely living and dies without ever tapping into what it is like to truly live. It is not fair to make someone else live a life to prop someone else up mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, or so someone can be right or save face. The karma is too high for all concerned. A reflection question for listeners. The next time you hear someone share something they want to do that would affect you, stop and reflect before you respond. Ask yourself, why do I want to have dominion over them and stand in between them and what they want as an authority? In my opinion, this makes someone a very small person indeed. It's taken a minute for this author and skilled listener to take in the actions of the doctor above. From her viewpoint, he was destroying someone's ability to settle and find their own confidence. Rather, it was an experience of constant stimulus, heightening panic, urgency, and anxiety. Advice to speakers from a skilled listener. Remember, you don't need to take it. Free will. I can't stress enough to stop listening to others. Stop seeking advice and coaching from friends, family, peers, and professionals who do not have formalized training. By formalized, I am suggesting someone who is a professional listener, who is trained in not taking what is being shared personally. Why do I suggest this? For a happier life, even though the hardest of decisions and changes you make. Those hard decisions and changes you make, I can't stress enough to stop listening to others. Stop seeking advice and coaching from friends, family, peers, and professionals who do not have formalized training. By formalized, I am suggesting someone who is a professional listener who is trained in not taking what is being shared personally. Why do I suggest this? For a happier life, even through the hardest of decisions and changes you make. Those hard decisions and changes make you stronger leaders. That's the difference. One experience leads to strong leaders and autonomy that brings ease in life and success. The other, well, you're living it. Author's statement to unskilled listeners. You can't compare where there is no comparison. Advice to unskilled listeners. Remember, you don't need to take it. Free will. Listening is the greatest gift on the planet. What is yours wrapped in? The lack of skill sets in listeners is creating emotional clutter in those you are steering in the wrong direction, and yours and my community, locally and globally. These are the seeds of unspeakable violence that can grow into violence that is monstrous, whether a person internalizes it or projects it onto others. Listening is the greatest gift on the planet. What is yours wrapped in?